Okay. And Kesubos Kuv Beis Amid Beis. In the Schottenstein Gemara, it's 102b2, second column. In the regular Gemara, it's Toshma, middle of the page. Okay, in the middle of the page where it says Toshma. Come, I'll ask you a question. Okay, the Gemara is basing this on what a din that Rav Ashi said before. Rav Ashi was asked a question, if people make these conditions, about supporting the daughter and supporting the family and all that when they get married, are these things allowed to be written down or are they only oral? That was the question that he asked before. So Rav Ashi answered, no, you can't write it. Because if you write it, then it becomes an official document, and then it's possible they'll go back to the fields that were sold, and if they go back to the fields that were sold, they're going to go collect the fields when they really halachically should not be able to collect the fields. Because the only thing the guy did, he said, I'm going to support your daughter for 5 years. It's not a halachic obligation that he has to do, so therefore you can't bind fields like that. But if you write it down on a piece of paper, people are going to think, okay, then I can go to bought fields and go collect it. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Toshma, come, I'll ask you a question. It says in a Mishnah the following. In case in Shtad Eirisim v'Nesuyin, okay, years ago, we learned a man could do kedushin with a woman in one of three ways. Either kasef money, like we do today, you give her a ring or something, or they're able to do a document, you are consecrated to me with this document, or actual intimacy. Well, intimacy is not done. So there's what's called Shtar Eirisin or Shtar Nesuin. Shtar Nesuin means that they're actually a document, they're going to get married to each other. So all of these things are not allowed to be written. Both parties have to consent. Okay? Documents are, Eidus and the Gemara is going to talk soon, and Nisuin, documents that they're going to get married. These things can only be written if the husband and wife both agree. They both agree that they're going to be doing it. Otherwise, you can't write it. And the Gemara says, but if both people agree that they'll do it, Kaisim, you could write it. Now, what type of documents are we talking about? Kedushin and Nisuin, Kedushin and marriage. The Gemara thought, Nistamba, what type of document is there for marriage? It means psikta, that the financial arrangements. In other words, like this, the Gemara says, you can't write a document that says, you're consecrated to me with this document, unless if they both agree. Okay? Shtar Nesuin, the Gemara thought meant that it means they make up, I'm going to support you, Exon, or your daughter, I'm going to support your family in a certain way. So the din is, you could only write it if both people agree. The husband, the wife, everybody agrees. Which means, though, that if they both agree, then you could write such a document. But the Gemara thought, what type of document are we talking about? A document where the husband promises he's going to support the wife's daughter for 5 years. So here it does say you could write it. Rav Ashi just got through saying these documents are not allowed to be written. And here the Mishnah says if they both agree, the husband and the wife both agree, you're allowed to write the document. So that's a question on Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says he can't. So the Gemara says no. What it means is Shtar Eirisin Mamish. Eirisin means the document says that you are consecrated to me with this document. It has nothing to do with financial responsibilities. What the Mishnah is saying, if a guy, like he says, the Rapapa of Rav Shravya, the Itmar, what happened if the Kedushin document was written for the sake of the certain woman, but she didn't know about it? Okay? It's a very simple case. A guy wrote a document that says, with this document. Remember, what's very important to know over here is, you could do Kedusha with a ring, like we do today, which is instead of money, or you could write on a piece of paper, Harei at Mekudeshesli, with this document, according to laws of Moshe and Yisrael. Now, what happens if the guy wrote it with that woman in mind, but she didn't know about it when he wrote it? The husband was planning to get married to this girl, and he wrote this document for this particular woman, but the woman never knew about it. Then he wrote it. So that, the question is, Rabba v'Ravina Amar Mekudeshes. Rabba and Ravina still say the woman is Mekudeshes if later she knew it, and he gave her the document, and she accepted the document, even though when they wrote it, she didn't know about it. But the fact that when gave it to her, she knew about it, it's good. And our Papa and our Shravya Amma Einu Mekudeshes. It's not good. Why isn't it good? Because they hold, not only does it have to be given with her knowledge, it has to be written with her knowledge. And therefore, with this mission that the Gemara just quoted, when the Mishnah the Gemara just quoted, that said, these things, if they both agree you can write, is not talking about financial documents. They're talking about Kedushin documents, marriage documents, nothing to do financially. And according to Ravashi is saying, financial documents, you cannot write at all. Why? Because the writing is going to make it a lien on the properties, and these properties cannot have a lien on them, because it's not a biblical obligation. Then the Gemara says like this, Tashma. Come on, I'll ask you a different question. Meisum, if the husband's died, okay, that means like this. The case, Amish has said a case before. Here, in the first Mishnah it says, Meisum, both husbands died. Remember the case was, I'm going to support your daughter, right? The guy marries a woman, and he says, I'm going to support your daughter for 5 years. Then he divorces her or whatever, and then she marries somebody else, and the second husband promises also for 5 years to support their daughter, right? It's from a different marriage. Now, both husbands die before the 5 years are up, okay? In other words, two husbands married this woman, one at a time, and they said, we're going to support your daughter for 5 years. Then both died. Both husbands died within the 5 years. Now, the heirs, she's not a child of any of them. She was from a previous marriage. So the kids, now they died. So what's the din? B'nei Seyam nizaynim minachasim b'nei chayre. Their own daughters that these men had, not this girl, gets from the unsecured properties, because she's a Baal Chayv. And here there's a very interesting din that the Gemara is saying over here. The case is like this. A guy marries, Reuven marries Rachel. Okay, and he says to Rachel, you have a daughter? I promise you I'm going to support her for 5 years. Then they get divorced. She marries Shimon. So Shimon now is married to Rachel. He also says, I'm going to support your daughter for 5 years. Then both husbands died in the 5 years. Okay? Now, their heirs get their property. Now, and they have their own daughters. Besides this girl, okay? They have their own daughters. So their own daughters cannot be supported from fields sold to other people. But this original girl, she can go to bought fields and collect the money. Now, the Gemara asks, why can she go to the buyers? That means it was a written document. You're telling me you're not allowed to write it because she's not allowed to collect from the sold fields. Here it says clearly that their own daughters cannot collect from bought fields. But this girl could.
Sold fields?
Sold. Sold. No, I mean fields they sold to others. Sold and people bought. So their own daughters that inherit them cannot go and collect from the fields which were bought by somebody else. But this girl could. So the Gemara says, and why? Because she's like a Baal Chayv. She's like a creditor. So the Gemara is asking, but that doesn't make sense. You just got through saying that you don't write it. When the guy promises to support his daughter, his wife's daughter, stepdaughter, for 5 years, he can't write it because then they're going to go collect from the sport fields against halacha. And here it says clearly that she goes and collects in those bought fields. It's contradictory to what you just said. So Gemara says you're right. Hacham Hayaskin is speaking, Shakanu miyodei. They made a kinyan. In other words, like this. He didn't just promise. He actually picked up a handkerchief and made a kinyan, which legally binds him to her to collect, even if the fields are sold. So over there is unique. If they wouldn't make that kinyan, Gemara says she cannot go to the bought fields and collect because she has no right. This that it says she can go to the bought fields to collect it because she was promised 5 years of support is speaking in fields because he made a kinyan with her. And because he made a kinyan with her, he picked up a handkerchief, whatever, that bound him and all his properties that he owned, and therefore even though the properties were bought and sold to somebody else and they were bought, she can collect it. So now the Gemara says, 1 minute, if it's speaking he made a kinyan, then their own daughters should also be able to collect from the buyers. You tell me his own daughters can only collect from fields at hand. The other one could go and collect bought fields. So the Gemara says, but how could she go? So you say because they made a kinyan. If they made a kinyan, that means the other daughters made a kinyan. So why can't they go to the bought fields? So the Gemara says, very strange. Kanu lazuv lekanu lazuv. They made a kinyan only with the stepdaughter and not with their own daughters. So therefore their own daughters cannot go to the bought fields. But the stepdaughter, because she had a kinyan, she can do it. So the Gemara says, my psika, why do you think like that? I mean, a guy makes a kinyan only with his stepdaughter and not with his own daughters? Why should a guy do that? So the Gemara says very simple. The stepdaughter, when this guy married this woman with the stepdaughter, he didn't have any daughters yet of his own. So therefore, when he made a kinyan, they weren't there, they weren't existing yet. So he couldn't make a kinyan with them. The stepdaughter, when he married the woman, she was already existing.
But even if he did have daughters, the fact is that he made it for that woman's daughter.
Correct. But the Gemara says, why should he make a kinyan only with the stepdaughter, not with his own daughters? So the Gemara says, because they weren't there then. He says, the stepdaughter, the Hava Bishas kinyan, who made a kinyan when she was alive, when she still was alive when the kinyan was made, Mahana lo kinyan, then the acquisition is effective for her. Bonus, his own daughter, the Lahava Bishas kinyan, that didn't exist before the marriage to this woman, right? Loi Mahana lo kinyan, kinyan can't help because you can't make a kinyan when somebody is not born yet. So therefore the Gemara says like this, the stepdaughter can collect from the fields that were bought, and the natural biological daughters can't because he made a kinyan with her. Why didn't he make a kinyan with his own daughters? They weren't born yet.
This is one opinion.
No, that's what the Gemara is answering. Yeah. But the Gemara is going to ask, maybe his daughters were alive when they made the kinyan. What's the case? He says, Mila Yaskina, we're not discussing a case, the Havoi B'Shas kinyan, that they were at the time of kinyan. Even the biological daughters. How? Could go in the Girsha, he divorced her. Okay, in other words, like this, the guy married her, they had kids, he divorced her, and remarried her. I just saw online, there's a really weird thing happened in Israel. There was a bar mitzvah, it's a whole thing on the Yiddish online. There was a bar mitzvah in Israel. This man or woman who were married years ago.
Oh, they showed up and they got
Showed
married.
up. It wasn't their kid's bar mitzvah. They just happened to show
It
up.
was a wedding.
No. It was a bar mitzvah, and this man and woman, they didn't even know the other one was invited. They were once married years ago, and they were sitting and talking, and they decided they're going to get married. So a rabbi at the bar mitzvah, they put a shmata out, a white tablecloth, and they made a chuppah.
Is that illegal?
No.
That's not legal?
No, you just go to mikveh. There's so many things you can't do that.
You don't mix two simple.
Besides that it's a minor issue. You can't do such a thing. I mean, all the comments, you should see in the comments.
Was an Orthodox rabbi?
Sephardic rabbi in Israel.
What a rabbi?
Long payas.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'm saying. I have a picture of it, the clip of
It's not legal,
the
so
man
why-
and the woman and the rabbi doing the wedding.
If it's not illegal, why do you do it?
I don't know why he did it. Ashkenazi rabbi wouldn't do it like that.
Yeah, like you said, what about a mikveh?
No, he's like the guy looks like a wild rabbi, like a real wild guy.
One of those. Not one of those Chabad rabbis.
Probably from the garage somewhere.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay, so the Gemara asks questions like this. How do you know the biological kids weren't there? Maybe they were there. How do you have them there if the condition was made before they got married? He says like this. Kugan de Gersha, he divorced the wife after the biological daughters were born. Vahadar, and then he remarried her. So now, the stepdaughter and the daughters were alive, and they both made a kinyan. So how come this one can go to the bought properties and this one can't? So the Gemara answers, Ella, the stepdaughter, the lesser B'tanai Bezdin, who is not supported by a stipulation of the court. I'll explain in a second, Manolo Kinyan, the acquisition is good for her. Bonus, the son of B'tanai Bezdin. The daughters which have an automatic income from the stipulation of the court, Kinyan doesn't help. Okay, meaning like this. Okay, the Gemara said very simple. The rabbi said, when you marry a woman and she has your daughter, you have an obligation to support the girl. The daughter, your biological daughter, you have an obligation. See, the boys used to go work. Okay, the girls didn't go work. So it's an unwritten part of the Ksuba, yeah, that if we got a man marries a woman and they have daughters, Bezdin says you have an obligation to feed her. To the extent that even if the father dies, the brothers can, until she gets married, she gets supported from the estate. Now, stepdaughter, there is no obligation to support your stepdaughter. Over here, the guy obligated himself to do it. So because he obligated himself to do it, Torah doesn't say you have to do it, and therefore when he makes a kinyan, it's a very powerful statement. Biological girls that the Chachamim say you have to support, kinyan is not going to help them. So the Gemara right away asks, Migra Gar, why should it be worse? Because the Bezdin says you have to feed them, kinyan doesn't help. It doesn't make sense. It should be the other way. So the Gemara says Ella like this. Why the biological daughters it doesn't work? Even this sin of B'tanai Bezdin. Because they're obligated to be supported by Bezdin, we are afraid the father left over money for her. And he gave her money already to pay it off. So therefore, we are assuming that the father owes the girl nothing anymore. The Gemara says this many times in the expression, Tzrori Atvesina means the father gave the girls a bundle of coins to pay up the debt before he died. And therefore, Bezdin doesn't let her go collect from bought properties. Why? Because she might already collected it. But that's only on the natural children, biological children, that the Chachamim say you must support. So because it's an obligation on the father, we're afraid the father will put away money and pay up the debt. Therefore, they cannot collect from the bought properties. The stepdaughters could.
If he didn't put money away,
Then she could collect, but we don't know that. We said maybe he did put money away. And she'll say he didn't, because then she'll be able to collect double. Okay, the next piece of Gemara is a very interesting Gemara, which is practical application today, by the way. And the Mishnah says that the first husband, remember we learned, the guy was married, promised to support the kid. Then they got divorced, the woman married somebody else. Okay, that husband also promised to feed her. So now what happens is, the Mishnah says, the first husband says, the girl's living with her mother with the second guy. Right? So, but the first husband still has to pay 5 years of food for the stepdaughter. Yeah? So the thing is, the first husband cannot tell the stepdaughter, you want me to support you for 5 years, come live with me. He's not the biological father, but he says, come to my house, because it's cheaper. You know, if you have to feed 4 mouths, and all of a sudden you get a 5th mouth to feed, it's much cheaper than feeding somebody separately in somewhere else's house. So the Mishnah says, I would think that the first husband can tell the girl, listen, you want me to support you? Come live with me in my house. If you're by your mother, I'm not going to support you. So the Mishnah says he can't say that. Why not? So Gemara says an interesting thing. Amar Rav Chisda, Zeis emeres bas eitzel ima. This teaches us a daughter always stays with the mother. Halachically. In other words, the husband can say to the daughter, I want you to live with me then rather than with your mother. Even though it would be cheaper for him, but he can do it. Why? Yeah, but he's saying he has other kids in the house. But what's interesting is because the girl belongs to the mother. You know, we mentioned this in the past. In Torah law, it's not in secular law. Forget, custody in the courts, in the secular courts. What does Torah law say about custody? Couples married, they get divorced, where do the kids go? So it's a very clear din. Girls go to the mother, no matter what age the girls are. Boys always go to the father.
Doesn't matter what age?
No.
Weaning?
Over 6. Up to 6, boys go to the mother. After 6, they go to the father. Why? Not chinuch. The mother needs to take care of him. The father went out to work. Who's going to take care of the kid? The mothers were home in those days, in the kitchen, right? So the mother has to take care of the kid. But girls at any age goes to the mother. That's not, by the way, the halachic way of dividing up in a divorce, where custody.
That's those days when they sent out the kids to work at 6 or 7 years old.
Right. Correct. They did. That's in over then. Well, in fact, it goes even more. If the heirs want to do the same thing, they say to the girl, you want to come, we'll support, back to the estate? The Gemara said they can't say it. A girl belongs with her mother at every age. But you see that also, just by nature. Girls are always with the mother. Yeah. And boys are supposed to be with the father. So 1 minute, so the Gemara asks, how do you know we're dealing with an adult daughter here? Maybe she's ktana. Maybe she's underage, and then she has to be under the mother's protective. The Gemara tells a very strange story that happened, and it said Ma'aseh Shohaya. What happened? The Gemara tells the story like this: Misha Meis, there was a guy that died. Ve'niach ben kotel imei. Okay, a guy died, and they left over a little kid, a little son. Yeah? Yosheyav Omar, the inheritors of the father said, Yehei Gadol Etzleinu, let him be raised in our house, because we're supporting him. V'imei Meres, and the mother says, Yehei B'ni Gadol Etzleinu, I want the boy by me. Right? What's the din? Manichan Eisei Eitzel Ima, Ve'manichan Eitzel Royli Yoshi. You don't leave him by the kids, only by the mother. And the Gemara says, why? Because of an incident that happened. Ma'isa Shahaya was once a story that the same exact case happened. The husband died, okay? The mother was left with a little kid. They gave him over to the inheritors, the sons, and they killed him. And they actually killed him. Oh, good. Why? Okay, but the Chabad Weekly, the Chabad Weekly is going to be all there. So the story was, they left over the kid by the boys, the sons, yeah, and they killed him.
To get more inheritance.
Right. He said like this, and he butchered him. Not only that, the first night they shechted him. Why? Why? Because they didn't want, it's another boy to inherit. Right? They didn't want him, so they killed him. So therefore the Gemara says because of that, the kid goes to the mother. It's a little kid. Oh, so the Gemara says, so maybe that's not the proof. So the Gemara says, it's still a proof. Because the Gemara should have said, why don't you go to give the food to the place? The Mishnah says, you bring the food to where the mother lives. The Gemara should have said, the Mishnah should have said, you bring the food to where she is, where the girl is. Why does it say the mother? It says, whether the girl's older, whether the girl's younger, a girl always belongs by the mother. Okay, let's learn the next piece of Gemara is a story. We'll go until the Mishnah. Okay, the two husbands cannot say, okay, come, live with us and we'll support you. Gemara says like this, Ahu Gavra, there was this guy, he rented out a mill to his friend, L'tchina. Meaning like this, I own a mill, I rented it to you. What's your rent? That you grind my wheat. Okay, I'm renting you the mill, okay? Yeah, but your payment of the rent is you're going to grind my wheat for me. Okay? What happened? Oh, why did this happen? Because the guy didn't have a donkey to turn the mill. Years ago, the donkey would pull at the string, and that would make the mill work. So the guy who rented it out was too poor. So he rented it to a guy, and the condition, he ground his wheat for him. The safe at the end was, the guy got rich. The guy that rented it out, the lender, the lesser it's called. He got rich. So Zavin Rechayev V'Chamer. Now he bought a donkey and a mill. Okay? So he didn't need the services of the first guy anymore because he had his own donkey and mill. So Amalei said, the landlord said to the guy that rented the mill, until now you milled my grain as rent for the mill. Now I don't need your service anymore. Pay me rent. You got it? The guy rented out a mill. He got paid his rent, the service. Then the guy that rented it out, became wealthy. He had his own donkey, he had his own mill. Right? Okay? So he didn't need the service of this guy anymore. So now he says to the guy, okay, you're renting my mill, pay me rent. Because you're not servicing me anymore to pay me for the rent. Amalei, he says, no. I'll continue to mill your grain. Okay? Yeah, he says to him, I'll still continue doing your grain for you. What happened? Ravina thought to say, Hainu Masnisen. That's what it says in our Mishnah. Okay, what does the Mishnah say? Let's discuss the case of the Mishnah. Very simple case. Two husbands married this woman. She had a stepdaughter. Husband number one said, I'm going to support the stepdaughter for 5 years. Husband number two said, I'm going to support her for 5 years. Correct? Now, after a year, they got divorced. And she married the second guy. Now, so one guy still has 4 years to support the daughter, and this guy has 5 years to support the daughter. So these two guys get together and say, why are we paying each one 5 years support? Together we'll support it for 5 years. Why should I? So he said they can't do that. Each one promised to support her, they're going to support her. One gives her food, and one gives her, the Gemara is going to say, money.
But still they split it.
No, full payment each. That's what they made up. So what did he say? One provides her food, and one gives her cash. The main means the amount what the food would cost. So that's what he thought. Mela, what did he think over here? The garment in the milling, he should be entitled to cash. Because he doesn't need the milling services anymore. Okay? He should get cash. Over there, so what are you talking about? Over there by the girl, she has one stomach. Okay? They both can't give her food. What you gonna do with 5 years of food from two guys? She has one stomach, not two. Meaning, why should both give her food? But here, the guy that's renting the mill could say, you know what? You can mill grain to sell, and I'll grain your mill. I'll mill your grain. He says like this: by the two men, you can't both give her food. Therefore, the Mishnah says one gives the girl food, one gives her money for the 5 years. So what did they wanted to say? Ravina thought, you know what? The same thing is over here. What are you going to do? He still has to pay cash. He should have to pay cash. Okay? Because now you don't need the mill anymore. Just like over there, the guy promised 5 years support. And he can't support her because there's somebody else supporting her. So therefore he gives her cash. So it's the same thing over here. He doesn't need a service anymore. If he doesn't need a service, let him give him cash. He says, no. Over there is different. The girl has one stomach. Okay? Therefore, they can't both give her food. What you going to do with it? One gives food, one gives cash. Over here by the mill, the guy that rents the mill could say, 1 minute, I could still mill your grain. I'll mill the grain for you to eat. And your mill will mill grain to sell. Why do I have to pay you cash? I'll still service you. The guy that rented it out to this guy said, I want cash. He said, no, I don't want to give you cash. I'll give you services. He said, but I don't need it. I have my own mill. He said, yeah, but my mill you'll take for yourself the food, and your mill that you bought, you'll sell the grain to somebody else. But that's only if he has full-time operation of the mill. But if there's full-time operation of the mill, meaning the owner, in other words, the slack time of the mill can be used to pay the rental when he services it. But then, meaning the renter, the guy that's renting it, doesn't lose anything by paying cash. Because the Gemara says like this, if the mill is constantly, he has enough business for the mill constantly working, right? There's no recess in the work that he could say, okay, now I'm going to mill your grain. He's constantly making money from it. Then the din is, you can't be like Zdaim. There's a rule, it's called Zanana V'Zelo Chosir. If one benefits and the other guy doesn't lose, you force the guy to do what's right, because otherwise it's like Zdaim. We learned in Baba Basra many years ago, if I have a field here, and you have a field here, and I want to sell my field, I have to sell to you first. Obviously the same amount, the proper, okay. Why? Because this guy wants to expand his field, the easiest thing is a field next door, and then he makes one big fence around both of them. The guy can't say, I don't want to do it. I don't like you, I don't want to do it. Why not? Because the Gemara says, you're not losing any, you're getting your money anyway. What's the difference who you sell it to? This guy benefits, and you don't lose anything. Bezdin forces him, because it's called Midas Daim. And here also, if the guy's making a lot of money from the mill, there's no spare time that he could say, okay, this is when I'm milling your grain, then he has to, Bezdin, then he would have to pay cash. Otherwise not. Okay, let's leave it here.
That's it.
That's it for today.
All right, Rabbi, listen.
Next.
I'm trying to make it,
Next Tuesday is